The NFL world was badly shaken by the near loss of a player Monday night, with a big thumbs up to the league's on-field medical team. Sal Paolantonio and how Philly can get its mojo back. Sean Green has a look at your wacky Week 18 slate, and Gary Myers on the Hall of Fame 15 and those we lost in 2022. It's all coming up right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for week number 18 of This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Great. Thank you very much for joining me. We have a lot of National Football League information crammed into this 70 minutes or so that JAKIB is kind enough to bequeath to me each and every week. So thanks for sitting in. And we have the usual suspects lined up. And in just a few minutes, Sal Pao is going to join me. And we're going to talk about Philadelphia last week and this week coming up against the Giants and how the Eagles, in fact, can get that mojo back. Because right now, that car is on the side of the road. And there is a white flag tied to the antenna. So Sal will offer some opinions to how that could be remedied. Certainly, number one, coming back would be a big factor. He is still limited in practice, but according to A.J. Brown and others, he's taking the a QB1 practice reps. So signs are pointing towards Jalen Hurts returning for Philadelphia. Be talking to Sean Green at the bottom of this hour concerning a strange Week 18 slate. The Week 18 slate, as usual, is rife with games where half the games don't mean anything and you're guessing which players are going to play. And the other half may have significant importance for at least one team. And while the other team, you don't know how they're going to act. A classic example being the Eagles hosting the Giants on Sunday. The Giants are talking a good game, or were earlier in the week, about how, no, we're going to play our guys. I guess when Tom Coughlin did it, that famous final game of the season when the Giants hosted the Patriots. The Patriots were 15-0. The Giants played everybody and met them again a few weeks later in the Super Bowl and beat them. But I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think you're going to see some Giants, most notably Saquon and Daniel Jones, will make a limited appearance in that game Sunday. Philadelphia's a 14-point favorite. And then Gary Myers will join me at the top, near the top of the next hour, just to talk about one of Gary's favorite subjects, that is the Hall of Fame final 15. They have to cut it down to 5. We'll take a look at some NFL obituaries, some big names that we lost in 2022. And maybe with Gary, too, we'll take a sneak peek to it, why Ron Rivera is still a head coach in the National Football League. That's all coming up here. Excuse me. All right. So let's look, starting with Sandra, why don't you bring up my Vince Lombardi here. We'll take a look at what the hell is going on out there. Well, the Eagles did start the new year with a thud. And what is going on? Philadelphia came in and you're a double-digit favorite against the Saints. And right from the get-go, the Saints go off on a 9-minute drive, resulting in a touchdown. And you can just see the air was let out of that link balloon. And the Eagles struggled for the entire game, got it back to 13-10, and then a terrible miscommunication between Gardner Minshew and A.J. Brown. Brown said he signaled to Minshew, do not throw that quick slant. Minshew obviously didn't see it. And then Brown decided, well, I signaled to you, I'm not going to go run the route. He clearly hesitated off the line of scrimmage. Marshawn Lattimore did not hesitate off the line of scrimmage, and the game was effectively over. So the Saints win, gutsy win for the Saints. They played hard all season long with myriad quarterback problems, but New Orleans was eliminated later on by Tampa Bay winning. But the Eagles have got to get this fixed. This is not the way you want to go into the playoffs, bye week or not. You don't want to go in doubting or questioning yourself or trying to reach back to say, boy, how did we do this back in week 7 and week 8? We were crushing people. So I think Philadelphia is going to have to put out a grade A effort here on Sunday, just to, as I was mentioning in the tease here, getting that mojo back. We'll be talking to Sal Pao about that in just a couple of minutes. 3 playoff spots to fill. We'll be talking about that throughout this hour, and not just playoff spots to fill, which are primarily, which are the 2 7 seeds in each conference, and the AFC South, whoever wins the Jacksonville, Tennessee game on Saturday night will be immediately sacrificed to somebody, I suspect, most likely the Chargers. But there's still lots of jockeying to do for the 1, 2, 3 seeds, certainly in the AFC, as a result of what looks like a canceled game between Buffalo and Cincinnati, and even in the NFC. The Eagles, of course, have their destiny in their own hands, but San Francisco and Minnesota have the same record. So if the 49ers win, they are the 2 seed. Minnesota would then be the 3 seed. And it's amazing to me, you hear guys on social media who don't know what they're talking about. I just had a guy coming in here on Sirius XM just talking about the fact, well, San Francisco has nothing to play for. Oh, really? What they had to play for is hosting that second playoff game as opposed to going to Minnesota. But there's just so many people who don't know what they're talking about or don't do the homework. But the 49ers looking good, even though I hear Christian McCaffrey will not play in that game on Sunday. But 49ers are playing Arizona, which doesn't play well anyway. So it should be a pretty easy game for San Francisco. And then we'll have all the playoffs will be set, and then we'll be ready for the actual dance. Why don't we bring Xander? Why don't we welcome in my good friend Sal Paolantonio, the host of the NFL Matchup Show and national correspondent for ESPN. And Sal, I want right off the shake, I want to hear that Instagram handle so that everybody. All right.
It's Sal Pal. ESPN, Sal Pal, ESPN on Instagram. It's a straightforward. It's pretty benign, but I give lots of Eagles updates, and I do. Okay. It's very Eagle based for the most part.
Well, let's be Eagle based now, Sal, if we might, at least in this first segment. When we come back from the break, what I'd like to do with you is I'm going to hit you with a lot of these cogent Week 18 games. Ask you for the winner, and then by the time you get done telling me who the winners are, we're going to know who those 7 seeds are going to be and who's playing who. All right. But for now, let's talk about Philadelphia. Give me your opinion of the game against New Orleans, and what type of psychological bruising now have the Eagles sustained?
Pat, you gave a great metaphor. The car is on the side of the road with a white flag on the antenna, and they got to get their mojo back. There's no question about that. I think a lot will be determined in the first couple of drives in the first quarter. And they've got to get some energy on offense, some purpose on offense. I think it has to start, obviously, with Jalen Hurts. And it is pretty clear that he's going to start against the Giants on Sunday.
Right.
And, Jalen Hurts will bring energy and excitement back to the team. The game is an emotional game. And the quarterback always provides the most emotion,
right?
Whether it's an even keel emotion or a kick start or a jolt, whatever it is, it comes from the guy with the ball in his hands all the time.
Right.
So it's up to Jalen Hurts to really reignite this team. I think he will. But the question then becomes, Pat, can they sustain offense the way they played offense when Jalen Hurts was fully healthy?
Exactly right.
Before he got hurt. Can he throw the ball downfield? They led the league in explosive plays.
Right.
Can he run the ball to the point where it becomes important to stop him and then open things up for Miles Sanders?
Agreed.
He's an important complementary component of the Eagles running game for the last 2 seasons.
Right.
Will they put him at risk? I hope. And I sent you that stat.
Yep.
Which I couldn't believe. I don't know who came up with it. I think it was Elias or ESPN, whoever came up with it, said the Eagles have run the most quarterback sneaks in this century.
Yeah.
Yep. This year, they've run the most quarterback sneaks in this century. Yeah. They've used their quarterback, their most expensive puzzle piece, as a jackhammer in the middle of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Boy, isn't that a recipe to get somebody hurt?
I know. But as you mentioned just a minute ago, it's a vital part of the run pass option is a vital part. Not run pass. I'm sorry. The read option is a vital part of what the Eagles do. And it isn't the same with Gardner Minshew.
No, it's the run pass option, Pat. They do a lot of different things.
Yeah,
Their run game is multiple. They have a lot of different things that they do, which has made it, great. Now, without Lane Johnson on the right side, that becomes an issue because they are a right-handed running football team because they have a right-handed quarterback. So they're a right-handed running football team. Right. So, I mean, to a certain degree, you can explain the sacks with Jack Driscoll in there, but when I was at the podium when Gardner Minshew came in, and after he talked about how poorly he played, I specifically asked him, "Did you hold on to the ball too long?" And he said, "Yeah, I held on to the ball too long." Right. You can solve this problem with 4 words, Pat. Hut, ball out. That's it.
All right. Talking about mojo, Sal, how much do you lay, if any, at the feet of the play calling? The fact that Miles Sanders had only 1 carry in the first half.
It was 2 carries, Pat. It was 2 carries in the first half for 9 yards.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But, after the Saints went on that long drive of 8 minutes and 58 seconds for a touchdown at the beginning of the game in the first quarter, first drive of the game. The Eagles gave the ball to the Saints.
Right.
First drive of the game. They go down the field.
Yep.
The Eagles do not have good field position after the kickoff.
Yep.
And they have 3 straight dropbacks for Gardner Minshew, who threw interceptions against Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a Pro Bowl running back.
Yeah.
You got to go heavy and just go right at. You got to make Cam Jordan think, okay, well, I'm going to get a mouthful of Miles Sanders all game long.
Yep. And I'll tell you, Sal, I think with Sunday's game, the Giants may rest a lot of guys, but the 4 guys who are not going to be resting are whoever's playing defensive line for the Giants. These are guys who might not have played much this season. They're going to be motored and ready to go. I think you're going to see a major dose of Sanders and the other Eagle running backs on.
And Nick Sirianni acknowledged as much. He understands the mistake that was made there. He put that on himself. He gets it. But it's a little too late. Now they're in a must-win game. So, how do they get the mojo back? I'm going to answer the question for you, Pat. You got to win the game.
That's there you go. There you go. Well, I want you to answer it.
You got to win the game, Pat. I mean, it doesn't really matter how you do it. Whether Jalen Hurts is thrown to the tight end or throwing 80 yards down the field to A.J. Brown, or whether or not Miles Sanders gets 30 carries and Gainwell gets 20. Whatever it is, it must be a win.
All right.
Then you get the win. And then you have 2 weeks and said, all right, well, we had a little bit of setback, but we still had the best record in the National Football League. We're still the number 1 seed. We're starting our playoff run at home. All is right. And we get 2 more weeks to get Jalen Hurts better. All right. Have to win the game. Doesn't matter how you do it.
All right, Sal, when we get back here, I want to talk to you a little bit more maybe about the Giants and Daniel Jones. You've been talking good about Dan. You've been right. And I want to give you a big attaboy about those Green Bay Packers. And we'll look at the Week 18 slate, too. We'll do all this with Sal Paolantonio.
Oh, boy, attaboys.
That's right. They don't come out often.
No,
here,
they do not. Like manhole covers. Definitely not.
But we'll do one with Sal Paolantonio.
I wouldn't want to work for you, Pat. No way.
When we get back here on This Week in Pro Football.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
Cantor, Novak, Beaver & Pike is a full-service CPA firm with offices in PA and New Jersey, offering first-rate accounting, audit, and tax services. They focus on helping clients achieve their business and financial goals, from startup operation to long-term financial planning. For more information, call Terry Cantor or Dan Pike at 215-550-2954 or on the web at cnbpcpas.com.
Are you looking for a family-friendly fitness center in the heart of Bucks County? Spring Mill Athletic Club has programs and activities to offer the whole family for every age and season. Group classes, personal training, dance academy, summer camp, and more can be found at this non-intimidating environment. Come tour Spring Mill Athletic Club today and get a free 1-week trial membership. Visit us at springmillathletic.com for more information.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back here this week in pro football. Pat Callahan hosting here on JAKIB Sports. You can follow me on Twitter at TWIPF Pat. Follow the station at JAKIB Sports. And great to have Sal Paolantonio joining us. You can follow Sal on Instagram at Sal at ESPN. Did I have it right?
Sal Pal, ESPN.
Sal Pal, ESPN. Okay. I just wanted to goad you into saying it again. That's
all right. You got it.
All right. Let's talk for a minute about the Giants, Sal, if I might. And you had been talking intermittently throughout the year about Daniel Jones. And I bring it up because you've also said during the year that the one of the major impetus for Jalen Hurts' success has been the way he's cut down on turnovers. Well, Jones has done the same thing. Is he the major reason, in your opinion, why the Giants have turned it around this year?
Oh, without a doubt, he is the major reason. There's no question about it. You know, he leads the NFL, Pat, in interception percentage. So Hurts is second, and that guy Tom Brady is third.
Yeah.
So there's a major reason. He only has 8 turnovers this season, Pat. Yeah. It's on pace to be the fewest in his career. And he had 23 turnovers as a rookie. 16 turnovers in 2020, 10 turnovers last season.
Yeah.
He has career highs, don't forget, in rushing attempts, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns, Pat.
Yeah.
And he's been on the field for all 16 games. There's only been 11 quarterbacks that have been on the field for all 16 games.
Yeah.
And you look at the list, okay, Patrick Mahomes going to the playoffs, Josh Allen, playoffs, Burrow, playoffs, Brady,
You're
playoffs,
exactly right.
Playoffs.
Exactly. Everyone.
Justin Herbert, playoffs. Geno Smith knocking on the door. Kirk Cousins, playoffs. Yep. Trevor Lawrence, playoffs. Jared Goff knocking on the door. Pat.
Yep. Every single one who started every game is either in or is could get in this week. That is not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. There's only 11 of them, and it's not a coincidence. It certainly is not.
Yeah. So the Giants. Yeah, I give the Giants a lot of credit. I give Brian Daboll a lot of credit for the way the Giants have. It looked like they were going to skid off the road there after they opened up 7-2, but they got the ship righted with that. Even actually with the tie against Washington.
Well, it goes back to what we have talked about on this show. You mentioned it. If your quarterback is not turning the ball over, and if he is on the field available for you, this is a year where we've had 64 different starting quarterbacks. That's the most since the strike-shortened year of 1980. I think it's 84, correct? In the strike year of 84.
Yeah.
So, Pat, I mean, it's not a coincidence. You stay on the field and you don't turn the ball over. You got a shot to go to the playoffs. And going back to what you mentioned about the Packers, I don't think I see anybody beating the Packers right now.
No,
I mean, I don't mean anybody.
Yeah. I know, isn't it something? I mean, and I a word too before we get to these games, too, Sal, about Tom Brady. Brady has had, even though statistically he's held up quite well, but still, he didn't have a Tom Brady type year. And then all of a sudden, boom, he found a phone booth. Off goes the uniform. On comes the blue S, or the blue uniform with the S on it, and he just goes berserk, beats Carolina. Tampa Bay is in the playoffs. Him and Aaron Rodgers, they arrested that story that all the old guys were failing this year. They both really stepped up at the end, didn't they?
Yeah, and the Packers on defense have 8 interceptions in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
So, 8 turnovers in the last 3 games, 8 takeaways. And as for Brady, 45 years old, has the most pass attempts in the league at age 45.
Yeah.
If he just had a little bit of help, Pat, little bit of help, they'd have 12 or 13 wins, Pat.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Dallas is going to have to go there, Sal. We'll see.
Dallas
That may not be as easy.
No.
Not that it was going to be an easy game, but I think a lot of people thought Dallas was going to be the favorite in that game. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's like he's like Steven Seagal, hard to kill. He's even
yes.
Last year the Rams went in there. Your Rams, right?
Yeah,
it was last year, and they had a big lead. And Brady comes back. He comes back. He's getting punched in the mouth. He's complaining to Sean Hockley about his mouth bleeding.
I know.
He comes back, and it takes a miracle shot down the field where Carlton Davis is caught unawares, and Cooper Kupp, the MVP, goes past them for a touchdown. I mean, Pat, it took a miracle to beat Tom Brady.
I
last
know.
year.
Oh, my God. I am aware of that. I'm very aware
Pat,
of that.
Dallas at Tampa.
Yeah.
Is probably going to be on ESPN.
I was going to say, that's the Saturday night game. Isn't that going to be the Saturday night game for sure?
I think it's going to be our game, and I got to tell you, that's going to be.
It is.
I think we have a Monday night playoff.
We do.
game.
We do. They started that last year when the Rams played the Cardinals.
So right. So
could be the Monday night. Yeah.
Monday. I'm saying Monday could be the Monday night game,
Monday
and
night,
Pat, standalone Monday. That game will get gun smoke ratings.
I know. All right, Sal, here we go now. I'm going to start naming these games here, and I just want you to give me an up or down on them and who's going to win it. And then by that time, we'll have the playoffs lined up. Let me start with a couple of 2-foot gimmies, all right? San Francisco hosts Arizona. If San Francisco wins, they clinch the 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy, you should watch Brock Purdy. In fact, our show, the ESPN matchup show, or the NFL matchup show that's on ESPN that I've hosted, Greg Cosell has a great piece in the show about Brock Purdy on third down, on the money down. He has been veteran-like in his decision-making and accuracy. Brock Purdy gets it, and you should hear the way those players talk about Brock Purdy.
Isn't it, though? Isn't it amazing, Sal? I mean, the last player drafted, and the multi-millions the NFL spends on scouting. Here's the last player drafted, and he's
multi-millions they spend on scouting, and they couldn't get it right on this guy. Couldn't get it right on Tom Brady. He was the 199th pick.
And you look at Zach Wilson, second player picked in the draft, just sent home by the Jets. Sent home by his coach, telling him, go figure out if you want to play football. Oh, my God. It's amazing. All right. Minnesota at Chicago doesn't really matter. Minnesota is going to be the 3 seed if San Francisco wins. All right. Later on Sunday, Seattle hosts the Rams. Obviously, the Rams have the golf clubs in the trunk. Seattle will play, Sal, because they have the benefit, I guess, of Green Bay and Detroit not playing at the same time. So Seattle will be all out. Any chance the Seahawks stumble here?
No.
I agree. Okay. So then the Detroit Green Bay game, then with Seattle winning, Detroit is eliminated. So is there any chance you see Sunday night that the Packers go out for Old Lang Syne and give Green Bay a hard time? I'm sorry, the Lions give Green Bay a hard time.
Oh, no, I don't. I really don't. I mean, Dan Campbell's, he's totally committed, body, soul, and mind to the game. There's no question about that. He's a special guy. So they'll play hard for sure.
Yeah.
But the Packers are just too talented,
Right.
and the quarterback's, on a mission now.
They are.
They are on
You're
a
right
mission.
about that. Packers are on a mission is a good way to put it. They appear to be that very much. And as you've been pointing out, Green Bay goes in as the 7th seed. They're going to go to San Francisco. They much would have preferred to go to Minnesota, but they're going to go to San Francisco. But the way I look at that, Sal, you got Aaron Rodgers against Brock Purdy. Boy, that's a lot of pressure to put on that kid in a playoff game. But,
Well, the Packers defense is playing really well. They're taking the ball away. So
yeah.
I expect, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I know.
It's called This Week in Pro Football.
Right. Fair enough. Let's go to the AFC, Sal, where, again, the 7th seed is at stake. And it starts, though, with New England. New England has the inside track here. If they can beat Buffalo on Sunday, they are in. If they don't, then it opens the door up for first Miami and then Pittsburgh. Tell me how you think all that sorts out on Sunday in the AFC.
It's a great unknown, Pat. In watching the press conferences Thursday, it's pretty clear that the team is pretty emotionally affected.
Yeah.
Football is a game of the heart, as Marty Schottenheimer once very famously said.
Yeah.
You got to it's what we love about the game. You have to get physically prepared to play. You got to get mentally prepared to play, because the game is, a very difficult chess match. And then you have to get emotionally ready to play.
Right.
And I was listening to Steve Young talk about it, the great Hall of Famer Steve Young. And he said, if you're not emotionally ready to play, then you can't protect yourself properly. You need to have the right emotion to play the game. It helps protect yourself in the game. So the team has got to get emotionally ready. They got to get over that hump. And I don't know how they do that. I think they're still in the throes of figuring that out.
Yeah.
If you listen to them clearly, that's an issue. And they're going to have to, and that's where leadership comes in, Pat.
Yeah.
That's where leadership comes in.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody who can get you emotionally ready. One of the things that I do all the time before the game is I always watch who's breaking the team down before the game. Whether it's Fletcher Cox or Ray Lewis or Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks back in the day, or the great Brian Dawkins, whoever, usually a guy on defense.
Right.
Because the guys on defense, like I said, in order to get yourself physically prepared for the other team and protect yourself, you must be emotionally charged up.
Sal, speaking about the Buffalo Bills, which is who you're talking about, they got really good news today on Damir Hamlin. So, I think it's trending in the right way. I don't think the Bills at least will go into that game Sunday with the kind of heart sickness about whether Hamlin was still fighting for his life. It looks like things are progressing the right way. I think that'll be a big load taken off the Buffalo players' minds. All right.
Don't know the answer to that, Pat. We're not there.
That's true.
We're not there, and we just don't know. But, the 4 words that stand out for me were his heartbeat was restored on the field. Okay.
I know.
Okay. So, Pat, that's a tough thing for
it is
to go through.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how they respond. It's an unknowable thing.
Yep. But it could happen though for Pittsburgh, Sal. Just looking to close this argument, this thing out here. The Steelers, if they win and then the Patriots lose and the Jets manage to upset Miami, Miami's lost 6 straight. What a job by Mike Tomlin. Just like the Packers in the NFC, if he could squeeze the Steelers into that 7 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, you got an interesting coach of the year discussion.
Yeah, you do. Right.
You got Sirianni in the mix. You got Brian Daboll in the mix.
Right.
Clearly Mike Tomlin, Shanahan. Kyle
Shanahan. Exactly, with all the quarterback problems.
You got 4 guys who could get first place votes, Pat. And
you're exactly right.
Maybe it's a year where they divvy it up and they have co-coaches of the year.
Yeah. A lot to talk about here, Sal, as we get through the postseason. And I look forward to talking to you about it, especially next week. I think everything will be sorted out for next week. And you and I can start talking about some playoff matchups and and who's playing who. I think it'll be a fascinating postseason. I think it's unfortunate that the number 1 seed will go. I think we'll go to Kansas City. It's a shame for the Bills, but boy, life can be tough. That's all. Life can be tough, and I think Kansas City will end up with that 1 seed. Buffalo. You were talking about this last week. Now that it looks like the Bills are going to have to go to Kansas City to go to a Super Bowl, so not an easy place to do it. So, all right, Sal, listen, thanks a lot for joining me for this segment here. Appreciate it very much. Look forward to talking to you next week when we get to some playoffs, all right?
All right, thanks, Pat.
All right, Sal, thank you very much, pal. Sal Paolantonio joining us. It is tough for the Bills. A tough situation for Buffalo to go from looking like the presumptive number 1 seed, and now because of an incredible series of events, they are not going to be the number 1 seed. Kansas City should beat Vegas on Saturday in Las Vegas. I think the Raiders will play hard, though. They showed a lot of heart against San Francisco last week. But I think Pat Mahomes is Patty Mahomes. He's virtually unstoppable as a quarterback. So I think the Chiefs lock up that 1 seed, and now Buffalo will have to go to Arrowhead to get to the Super Bowl. When we get back, let's talk some more about these playoff scenarios. I want to talk a little fantasy football, some busts, and some things to look forward maybe for next year. And later on, we got Gary Myers. We got Sean Green joining us. Still a lot to do here on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@WhisPearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@WhisPearl.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
All right. Thanks for sticking with me here this week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you on JAKIB Sports. Give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. Follow the network at JAKIB Sports. as we rumble into week 18, the final week of the National Football League season. And what that was a rough week for the league there. A marquee Monday night game, very much anticipated. Buffalo at Cincinnati. Started off right off the shake with fireworks. Cincinnati, a quick touchdown. Buffalo right back down the field. They kick a field goal, and then it's absolutely devastating situation with Damir Hamlin. Lots of prayers for him, and it looks like they're going to work. It looks like things are looking better, according to the Buffalo Bills front office and to some others on the inside there at this hospital in Cincinnati. So things are trending up, and I'm very happy to hear that. One word I'd like to opine about that, social media being half the time being the raging inferno that it is. A lot of talk on social media about the fact that ESPN had reported that the message had been sent to both teams to, you have 5 minutes to warm up and then we're going to resume. Now, the league vehemently disputed that assessment. I think what happened, I don't have this, it's just my opinion as a veteran NFL watcher. I think the league provides that 5-minute notice anytime there's a serious injury in the field. Anytime a player has to be carted off and there's a lengthy delay, the league will tell each team, all right, you got 5 minutes to restretch and warm up. I think that happened. I think it was perfunctory. It was not indicated. They were not going to play that game Monday night. This was not going to happen. So the fact is the league has that serious commitment to that medical staff, that type of medical staff is there at every single game. And the league does deserve some kudos for that. And I want to especially to Bill's assistant athletic trainer, Denny Kellington. He was the man who was the primary worker on Damir Hamlin and the 9 minutes and restored that man's life. And God bless Denny Kellington and the work that he did. So anyway, just a couple other notes here as we go around the league. I said I wanted to mention a couple fantasy comments. The fantasy season is over now. It died a very bad death. The fantasy season did anyway when the Monday night game was truncated. But still, just some thoughts for next year. One is, if you get a chance to grab this primo quarterback, you got to do it. You just can't pass it up, unfortunately. The league leaders in touchdown passes this year are going to be the usual suspects: Josh Allen, Patty Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. So if they're sitting there, I know most leagues, we got to get the wide receivers now, the running backs and the quarterbacks. I get one in the 8th round. Sure you can. Sure, you can get one. You're going to get Daniel Jones. Why don't you? You're going to win a fantasy title? I don't know. So those 3 quarterbacks, they're just a lock, almost 3 touchdowns a week, 300 yards passing. Hard to pass them up. The other thing I wanted to mention about fantasy is there was a popular refrain last August, at least from the sources that I was looking at, that, don't be wary of these over 27-year-old running backs. It's been over 5 years since an over 27-year-old running back led the league in touchdowns. Well, Austin Eckler, an undrafted free agent over the age of 27, could end up with 20 touchdowns by the time this is over. He's just been outstanding, especially the second half of the year. So don't do that. Just don't pick by chronology. Pick based upon who you think is going to have the best season. How about that for a radical fantasy take? Look at the schedule and look how crowded the backfield is. Look how crowded the wide receiver room is, and grab the guy who's going to get the majority of the touches. That's the guy you want. So pay attention to that, and I think you'll do just fine. Just a word there about fantasy football. So and that Sal stole a little bit of my thunder there. He had all the stats rattled off, but I did total up the same kind of thing in terms of quarterbacks. Only 16 of the 32 teams in the NFL this year will start the same quarterback in week 18 as started in week 1. That's only half the league. No matter what the league does to protect its quarterbacks, there is such a heavy attrition rate because the ball's always in their hand. And now with this a read option and the fact that of those 32 quarterbacks, there's probably 8 that are intimately involved in the team's running game. Well, that's just another recipe for a quarterback missing 2, 3, 4 games, whatever it is. Look at the NFL landscape. Back to Trey Lance in week 2. Justin Fields is not going to play Sunday. He missed a few weeks during the year. Lamar Jackson has missed the last 4 weeks for the Ravens. They're desperately trying to get him ready and his knee injury ready for what will be a Ravens playoff game next week. The Bengals, as a result of what happened Monday, clinched the AFC North division. So it's just a rough league for quarterbacks. Sal mentioned 64 quarterbacks have already played this year. The Rams themselves are defending Super Bowl champions. Have started 4 different quarterbacks this year. So nothing will derail your team faster than a problem at quarterback. You look at these teams that are missing the playoffs, and I can guarantee you look at every single one of the 18 teams that are not going to make the playoffs, they got quarterback problems. So that's the way of it. That's the way of it in this league. All right, well, listen, we get back. We still got a couple more heavy hitters joining us. Sean Green from Bet SGPN, the Sports Gambling Podcast, will join us. We'll talk about what I said was a wacky Week 18 slate, and talk to Sean about some props when we get back here on This Week in Pro Football.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com. Where do you tailgate when your team's away? Join Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill for their first ever Birds Tailgate Party on Sunday, September 25th, starting at noon under the tent. Enjoy a full tailgate buffet from only $26.95 per person, along with specials at the bar. Celebrate with friends cheering on our hometown team. Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill Athletic Club. Visit juddsdining.com for more details.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back. This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you here on JAKIB Sports. And let's bring on this gentleman because his time is very valuable. And that would be the host of the Sports Gambling Podcast, the excellent Sean Green. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great. What's happening, Pat? Week 18. Wow.
I know. And it's a little bit of a crazy situation going on here. I guess let me start with this, Sean, is that there's season-long prop bets, right, where you could probably bet, say, back in September that Joe Burrow is going to throw for X number of touchdown passes or X number of yards, things like that. With players like him and Josh Allen or receivers like Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, what happens to those prop bets now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's kind of a two-part answer. It depends even on your state a lot of times. And like FanDuel, DraftKings, they have more they have a little bit more room to just decide like, hey, we feel bad, we'll grade this as a correct bet, even though it wasn't. The casinos in Nevada are really strictly regulated by the Gaming Control Board. So if it didn't happen in the box score, even if they wanted to honor it, they couldn't. So, and we're still waiting on final word for the NFL on what they'll do with this game. They're not going to resume it, but do the yards, points,
Right.
that kind of stuff, does that count towards season records? You even have like contract incentives. My guess is they're just going to say, hey, the game ended at this point. It's neither a win or a loss for either team, but the yards accumulated, the touchdowns scored would count towards season-long props. That's my guess.
Right. Right. So, I mean, it's such a muddled situation. It's so unfortunate. But as I was saying earlier in the show, Sean, it looks like Damir Hamlin is improving. So I guess that's the most important thing. But it is a shame. I'm just saying it's a shame that game couldn't have been completed.
Oh, no. I mean,
that was a major game.
You couldn't. I mean, it was one of the games, even when you got your schedule, you circled and go, wow, week 18, last Monday night game, Bills, Bengals. This is going to mean something. And clearly it meant something to Hamlin. When he was able to communicate, the first thing he wanted to know was, did we win the game? That just shows you that.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true, Sean. You're right about that. And it's just unfortunate. I was saying in the previous segment with Sal Pao that the Bills are going to lose that number 1 seed in the worst possible way.
The NFL is hoping that the Chiefs beat the Raiders, because the Raiders pull off an upset, then it gets real crazy, because then the Bills and Bengals like have a good case of hey, we should have been able to play for the 1 seed. But if the Chiefs get the win, then I think it's like, okay, Bills, Bengals, flip a coin for 2 and 3.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that's the like easiest scenario.
Yeah. It's funny, some of the scenarios, Sean, that we're talking about. Like one was assuming Kansas City, the 1 seed. If Kansas City was the 1 seed, then they had to choose between, do they want the week off or do they want home field throughout? And the 2 seed would get whatever the 1 seed didn't pick.
Yeah, and I appreciate creative solutions.
Yeah.
But I think the easiest and kind of fairest way to do it is, hey, Buffalo and Cincinnati, that game didn't happen. You guys only played 16 games. Yeah. Whatever your winning percentage is, that's what it is at the end of the season. Right. Because the inconvenience all the other teams, they're talking about, hey, we're going to have maybe we put 8 teams in the playoffs for AFC and NFC. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, the Eagles just, absolutely killed themselves to get that bye week, and now it's gone. You're going to have to. I'm sorry, Eagles. You're going to have to play the Commanders again. So
right. None of those solutions to me. Yeah. You're just creating more chaos. Yeah. It was a chaotic situation. The easiest and simplest thing is just play it out, right? Yeah. Hey, this game didn't happen. Let's move on.
Speaking about Week 18, Sean. By the way, Sean Green, presented by the good folks at UGI. Week 18, one thing struck me here, Sean. The Chiefs money line to win that game Saturday. To win 1,000, you got to bet 4,600. That is some. I mean, am I right that is some number, or does that mean that Vegas and everywhere else just thinks this game is an absolute slam dunk?
Yeah, but I would never, especially in Week 18, I would never bet big favorites just to win in the NFL, because it's the NFL. It's the most unpredictable sport. That's why it's exciting. And we saw Jarrett Stidham. He took the 49ers into overtime. They have an amazing defense. The Raiders lost by 1 the last time they played. So
I know.
I do. Obviously, I'm leaning the Chiefs winning the game, but I like the Raiders in the points there. And it's a division game. I think you're going to get a decent effort from the Raiders.
So did I. I do too. What an excruciating season the Las Vegas Raiders have had. I mean, some of their losses have been, the majority of their losses have been of an agonizing variety.
And it's crazy. The one of their few wins was an agonizing loss for the other team in that Patriots game. So how that didn't go against the Raiders, I still don't.
That is absolutely true. You're right. Another line that struck me here, Sean, that I think this is a question of timing. Green Bay is a 4.5 number over Detroit. Now that looks to me to be, if Seattle wins on Sunday, which I think they will do. I know you're a big Ram fan. I know you're upset to hear that. But if Seattle wins on Sunday, then Detroit is, the golf clubs are then thrown into the trunk. And I think that 4.5 number looks like a steal. Would you recommend anybody go grab Green Bay minus 4.5 right now?
Yeah, I do like Green Bay minus 4.5. It's one of my favorite bets. Jared Goff in 32 and below, he's 0-4. This Packers team is kind of coming together at the right time. Christian Watson getting back with their offense. They've looked really good. And the Lions defense, especially on the road outdoors, not quite the same. It's weird, though. In some ways, I kind of hope Seattle loses. I would, as a guy taking Green Bay minus 4.5, and hear me out, Pat, I would almost rather face the Lions team that's going to be nervous with a ton of pressure and they're going to Lambeau versus a Lions team with nothing to lose. Hey, our season's over. We don't care. We're going to pull trick plays and kind of play fast and loose. That to me is almost a more dangerous Lions team. So either way, I like the 4.5, but I kind of hope, and I would like the game to be, I have a little more on it. So I kind of hope Seattle loses. And I think I kind of like your Rams, especially at least with the 6.5. And I think they're a live dog on the money line. I know you're down on where the Rams are right now, but I think this is a get up spot for them. I mean, Bobby Wagner alone might carry this Rams team. Cam Akers is running like a guy who wants to stay in the NFL.
I know.
Baker Mayfield playing for his job, and it's a division game. And I'm still not sold on that Seattle defense.
No, Seattle. They did look good last week against the Jets because the Jets simply can't tie their shoes right anymore. What a franchise that. To be a Jet fan must be a seventh level of hell. But there you have it. But all right, let's turn our attention, Sean, to the home team here. Just give me a quick take on last week. How surprised were you that the Eagles just could not hit that gas pedal against the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised. I guess not shocked. I mean, Gardner Minshew is a backup quarterback for a reason, and it just kind of shows you the strength of Jalen Hurts and why I believe he should be considered the MVP. 13-1 with him, 0-2 without. We see this all the time, and as football fans, even as a gambling analyst, I fall victim to it, where you fall in love with that backup quarterback. He comes in, he has a pretty good game against Dallas. All right, now you're at home against the Saints. You should be able to cruise. And he didn't. He missed some easy stuff. Coaching staff, Sirianni and Steichen, didn't put him in a good place to succeed. But like that the pick six that he threw, that was just not reading the defense, not communicating with the receiver.
Total miscommunication with AJ Brown there. Yeah, right.
So he's a backup for a reason. I'm concerned about not having Lane Johnson, but I'd like the spot against the Giants. And as a homer, I'm going to spin it into a positive. Like this team needed a wake up call, and now they have a chance to get right. They're playing for something at home against a division opponent, so I think they'll be highly motivated. And the line is insane, but I do think the Eagles get the win.
I think what you just laid out is accurate. And I think it's important for Philadelphia. So did Sal Paolantonio. It's important for the Eagles. I'm not saying they need to bash the Giants, but they need to
get right.
And this is their only chance to do it. If they come out of this with a 17-14 win, yes, pat yourself on the back. You got that 1 seed. You got a week off, but there's going to be a lot of doubts going into that first playoff game, especially if it's the Packers coming to Philadelphia. You don't want that. You want to feel really good about what you're doing. So talking about Sunday, then, are there any individual props or anything else in that game that you like?
I mean, for the Eagles, I always love Boston Scott to score a touchdown against the Giants. He is a
giant. Yeah.
And again, the spread suggests that maybe the game gets out of hand a little bit, or maybe there's a situation the Cowboys lose, or the Cowboys seem like they're losing. There's a bunch of ways where Boston Scott is involved late. So I like Boston Scott anytime touchdown a lot in that Eagles game.
All right. I think it's a great idea, Sean, because I suspect hopefully you'd see a lot of Boston Scott in the second half if, in fact, the Eagles are getting ahead. right, listen, what else is going on here on the Sports Gambling Podcast here? God knows now what sports you're going to be getting into. I don't know if there's a highlight season kicking off, or I see the XFL is back. The XFL is back for its 33rd iteration.
We'll be covering the XFL. We got daily NBA podcasts, daily college basketball. So there's a ton of stuff going on right now. Besides the NFL playoffs right around the corner, we're doing a bunch of cool stuff for that. So
I saw that on Twitter. It's at Sean Green at Sean T Green, right? At Sean T Green. I saw that where you correctly picked it. Who was it? Air Force? I forget who they were playing.
Yes, Air Force San Diego State.
The exact final score.
Exactly. Yeah.
Man, oh man, what a savant we have here in Sean Green. I hope you're going to be able to join me for at least a couple of weeks of playoffs. I'd love to have you back as we rumble through. It's been great. I've enjoyed it very much the whole season, and I look forward to talking to you again next week as we look at a whole bunch of playoff games next week, Wild Card Weekend. All right.
Well, it's going to be fun.
All right.
Talk to you next week, Pat.
Thanks very much, pal. The great Sean Green joining us here from the Sports Gambling Podcast. When we get back, I'm going to be joined by a Hall of Fame elector, Gary Myers, and we're going to talk about the final 15 that made it to what will be cut down to 5. So I'll get Gary's take on that. And also we'll look through the year 2022. We lost some big name players in the NFL to who passed away. And we'll be talking with Gary about that. And of course, I want to talk about Ron Rivera, and we'll talk with Gary a little bit about the playoff setup. We'll do all that as we wrap it up here on This Week in Pro Football.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
For the team at Cordasco Financial Network, a part of Mercer Advisors, financial planning is about more than just managing your money. They guide you in making retirement, tax, insurance, and estate planning decisions by creating a plan based entirely on your individual needs. Plus, Cordasco Financial Network professionals work one-on-one with business owners in creating and managing company 401k plans, IRAs, and defined benefit plans. They can help you maximize plan efficiency, ensure full regulatory compliance, and optimize tax obligations. Call 855-558-3500 or click the link in the description below to learn more. Let their team help you secure your future. 855-558-3500. Cordasco Financial Network is a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Andrew Garrett Incorporated, which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors. Client experiences vary. Successful outcomes not guaranteed.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back this week in pro football. Pat Callahan here on JAKIB Sports as we wrap up week number 18's program here on the National Football League. It's been a very busy week in the league. Now we get into week 18 and the usual last week of the season histrionics, with a number of teams playing for everything and a number of other teams trying to get the hell out of there so they can start playing golf. We'll have to sort it all out. And there's a few guys who could help me sort it out better than this gentleman, a Hall of Fame elector, author, big book coming out on the New York Giants. And that would be a man who wrote a number of years for the New York Daily News with pretty good paper, pretty good sports page. That would be Gary Myers. Gary, how you doing?
How you doing today, Pat?
All right. Gary, we have a number of things that I'd like to cover with you. And let me get started here with first off, just some names I want to throw at you because in your long experience covering the NFL, you might have known some of these guys. I'm always, with my rapid aging process, I always look back on the guys on whose shoulders the current players stand. Players we lost in 2022, Franco Harris, obviously the most notable, and a very, very sudden, but a really, really great, maybe actually underrated player in his own right.
Right, Pat. I mean, most people know him for the Immaculate Reception, which actually happened in his rookie year.
Right.
And then for a period of time, he was the all-time leading rusher in NFL history.
Right.
So he had a great career.
He did.
I didn't get to know him very well because by the time I started covering, he was kind of at the tail end.
Right.
But from everything I hear about him, just a tremendous person.
Yeah. Darryl LaMonica died, the Mad Bomber, one of the first guys that Al Davis really turned into. And I'll tell you what, Gary, he's one of the guys I think who put the AFL on the map.
Absolutely.
But he passed away, just an absolute. I mean, I can't tell you how many highlights I watched of him throwing 55-yard bombs to Warren Wells for the Raiders.
Yeah, one of my favorite things when I was growing up was watching those 4:00 games on Sunday afternoon,
exactly
the
right.
AFL games between the Raiders and the Chargers.
Yeah.
52-45 was usually the
I know. How about the Heidi game? The Heidi game is a perfect example of that. Ended up 43-32.
I had to deal with my mother that I didn't have to do my homework until the last game was over on Sunday. Unfortunately, there were no Sunday night games then. But that was just a tremendous period of time to watch football. I loved the AFL. It was so wide open, and they had so many great players.
Don Maynard being one of them. We lost
Don Maynard.
And a guy who was the most unfootball player looking guy you might see, just a gangly old Texas boy. And yet he was critical to the success of Joe Namath in New York.
Absolutely. And in the AFL championship game in 1968, had a huge catch down the sidelines in the twisting wind to Shea Stadium. Do you realize that in the Super Bowl victory against the Colts, he did not catch a pass?
Yeah. Isn't that something? I know Namath didn't throw a pass in the fourth quarter of that game, but Don Maynard, I know you're right. It was George Sauer. I know made a number of catches, and then Emerson Boozer had a huge.
Matt Snell had to.
Snell had
touchdown the game. Yeah,
it should have been MVP, quite frankly. But
that's right.
Charlie Taylor, a guy who I always thought was in the mode. He was. You couldn't tell Paul Warfield from Charlie Taylor. They were the same number, and they both had that exact same gliding style. Exactly. Charlie Taylor, one of the first great wide receivers, I think, in the NFL.
Yeah, I love watching him play. And you're right. He and Paul Warfield were very similar players. I thought Warfield was the smoothest running wide receiver that I've ever seen. Maybe Jerry Rice in modern day or more recently, but Charlie Taylor and Paul Warfield were carbon copies.
Yeah. And Dan Reeves died. Reeves, an excellent NFL career. I can go back to remembering him in the Ice Bowl. He threw that halfback option pass to Lance Rensel for a touchdown. And it looked like the Cowboys were actually going to win that game. And then all the way years and years later, an NFL head coach, but that Super Bowl eluded him.
I got to know Dan really well over the years. His last year on Landry's staff was my first year covering the Cowboys. So I didn't get to know him real well then, but I got to know him very well when he was in Denver. and then he wound up here in New York. Just a great guy. I mean, just a throwback in terms of how cooperative he was with the media. I want to correct myself. Ditka's last year in Dallas was my first year in Dallas. Dan had left the year before.
Okay.
But I used to call him a lot, and he always, if he didn't pick up the phone himself and you leave him a message, he'd call you back within 10 minutes. Yeah. But, Pat, the story I want to tell you about Dan is I was doing an anniversary story in the Ice Bowl game. I don't remember if it was a 20-year anniversary, the 30 or whatever. Right. So, of course, I got a hold of Dan.
Right.
He told me his face was so frozen that he actually bit through his lip, didn't realize it. His tooth was through his lip, and he had blood streaming down his face. So that's how he knew something was the matter. He probably threw the best pass of that entire game.
I know. I think it probably was the best pass. You didn't throw it to Bob Hayes because Hayes never took his hands out of his trousers.
That's, right.
That's a fact.
I can still picture that, right?
Him running routes like that, like a penguin. Yeah. All right, Gary, I want to now segue to the Hall of Fame here. And I know that you're probably limited how much you could really discuss with this. We're down to the final 15. But it struck me, Gary, and maybe you can comment on this, the guys who were first year eligible, who made it this far, like Devin Hester. Just give me your thoughts. I'll be straight with you. I don't think Devin Hester belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think the guys who should be in the Hall of Fame are the guys who just played. They played like a guy like Joe Thomas, 10,363 straight snaps. That is impressive. Devin Hester was a specialist, but just give me your thoughts on that. Do you see a difference between those two type players?
Well, first of all, this is Hester's second year of eligibility, not his first. But I want to point out something to you that so last year he actually made it to the final 10. So he made the cut from 15 to 10. But when we cut it from 10 to 5,
he didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
Right.
So now what does that mean for this year?
Yeah, I know.
So you have Revis and Joe Thomas, who in my opinion are locks to get in this year. So that takes up 2 of the 5 spots. And obviously there were 5 players between 6 and 10 last year who didn't make it. And you figure 3 of those 5 will take up the other 3 spots, if you're trying to follow what I'm saying here.
I know.
So Hester does have a shot at it. I tend to agree with you that, he wasn't a full-time player. I know he played some wide receiver, but the reason he's even on the ballot is because he was the 2 or 3 most prolific returners in NFL history.
I know. Even though you mentioned Darrelle Revis, is there perhaps, I don't know if I would call it a recency bias, but Revis, his stats, if you look at him compared to Darren Woodson, who's also made it to the final 15. Revis, 4-time All-Pro, Woodson, 4-time All-Pro. Revis, 29 picks, Woodson, 26 picks. And Revis, 3 touchdowns, Woodson 2, for whatever that's worth.
Well, they play different positions also.
Yeah, but within the context of how this is done, they're defensive backs. I understand what you're saying. I do. But what I separated everybody into the position they played. Given I always thought, or it seemed to me like in a given class, they don't like to load it up with all offensive linemen or all wide receivers. It seems like they try and spread it around. But do you think there's a tangible difference between Revis's qualifications and those of a Darren Woodson?
Oh, absolutely. I hate to disagree with you on this one, but Darrelle Revis for a number of years might not have only been the best defensive player in the league. He might have been the best player in the league, especially in 2009 and 2010. Charles Woodson won the Defensive Player of the Year in 2009, and Revis should have won it. The list of quality receivers that he shut down, holding them less than 50 yards on a weekly basis, was astounding. They played, Rex had him in a man-to-man every play, always covered the team's best receiver, and invariably shut them down. Darren Woodson's a great player, won 3 Super Bowls.
Right.
I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer, except I don't think we ever looked at Darren Woodson and said, forget about being the best player in the league. Was Darren Woodson ever the best defensive player in the league?
That's
I don't
fair.
think that
All right.
No,
All right.
but there's just to me, there's just different degrees of greatness. Darren Woodson was a great player, and I'm going to think long and hard about him as we cut down this list.
Okay.
But I do think that Revis is a first ballot guy. I want to say one other thing about this. We make such a big deal about first ballot.
Right.
When I'm looking at, they give us the list of 15 after we hear all the presentations, and we check off 10. And then they give us the list of 10 and we check off 5. At that point, I'm not thinking about, well, is this the guy's first year of eligibility? Is it his 5th? Is it his 4th? Is he really a first ballot guy? I'm picking the 5 guys that I think are the most qualified to be in the Hall of Fame, whether it's his first year or his 10th year. Now, I can't say that's how everybody feels. I just don't put the weight on, well, we can't put him in this year because he's not a true first ballot guy.
That's fair. I appreciate that. I think you're right. Greatness is greatness. I think that's fine. Let me just offer you, Gary, before we get off this subject, my 5 that I insist that you vote this way.
Okay.
Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, they have almost identical stats, but I think they both they 4 years now they've made it to the final. I'm not saying that's why they belong in. I think their stats, they belong in there. Joe Thomas, for the reasons I mentioned. Now, he's a first-year guy, but I'm just struck by that 10,000 straight snaps. God bless him. Rondé Barber, I think his stats are very impressive. And I'll tell you what, Albert Lewis, you look at his stats, Gary, 42 picks, 13 forced fumbles, 12.5 sacks, 11 blocked punts. This guy's got a resume, but I don't think he has any chance of getting in.
Well, first of all, on Reggie Wayne, he was the second best receiver on his team for most of his career. I saw the 2010 Colts-Jets playoff game where Marvin Harrison had already retired. Reggie Wayne was the number 1 receiver at that point in his career. Peyton and Revis covered him every play of the game. Peyton Manning targeted Reggie Wayne once the entire game, 1 catch for 1 yard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to hold one game against the guy, but
it sounds like you are.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to having it's splitting hairs on some of these guys here. Because
I know it's a tough call. It's a tough call for you guys. There's no question. Yeah.
Plus, on the game clinching pick 6 by Tracy Porter in the Saints Colts Super Bowl, Peyton Manning's pass was intended for Reggie Wayne, who short-armed the ball across the middle.
No, I do remember that.
And
I do remember.
So, I remember those things. Now, as far as Albert Lewis, this is what I want to say about him. Great player, absolutely. Tony Dungy has been campaigning for him really hard. But, Pat, this year is his 20th and final year of eligibility.
Yeah.
How many times do you think he made it to the final 25 in those 20 years?
I would bet it's no more than a handful. Am I right?
2.
All right.
And this is the second time.
But that's because but I'm offering to you, Gary, that's because Albert Lewis, the name Albert Lewis and the name Darrelle Revis is going to kill him because Revis Island and playing in New York.
No, I don't buy the playing in New York stuff.
I don't know.
I mean,
you think Darrelle Revis? You think Darrelle Revis would be as well known as he is if he was an Arizona Cardinal?
Well, it depends. Did the Cardinals have any success as a team? The Jets went to back-to-back AFC championship games in Revis's 2 years with them. And then he played on a Super Bowl team in Kansas City. If you're going to tell me the Cardinals would have been a high-profile team because of their success on the field, then, yeah, he would have had Revis Island in Arizona.
All right.
The way I'm not even going to count social media as this. I don't think it makes a difference anymore where you play because – if you're a good team, you're going to be on national TV all the time. I mean, how many times has Buffalo been on national TV this year? And they're the second smallest market in the league. So what I'm saying about Albert Lewis, Pat, is that, first of all, the voters are spread out. It's not like of the 49 voters, 25 of them are from New York.
Right. That's fair. I understand that.
There's only like 2, me and Bob Glauber. And then if you want to count Peter King, because he lives here, but Peter's more of a national guy. Barry Wilner, who was with the AP, I think he's still a voter. He's a national guy. But if Albert Lewis, in his 20 years of eligibility, only made it to the final 25 twice, and this is his first year as a Final 15, as a finalist.
Yeah.
Well, we got to rewrite the history of what the committee has done for 20 years
I
and
understand.
put him in.
Right.
That was the argument against Everson Walls a few years ago, that, hey, if he was a Hall of Fame player, and everybody had great things to say about Walls in the meeting, but the argument against him was, if he was so deserving, why in his 20th and final year is it the first time he's Final 15?
Well, look, there's merit to that argument, except that the obvious riposte to that argument is, okay, then don't do 20 years of eligibility. But look, you had said this to me months ago, that we could go
But
on.
the 20 years of eligibility benefits guys who come close and come close and come close, and then finally, maybe by the 18th and 19th year, they get in. That's why they do it like that.
All right, fair enough.
It's not for a guy who comes out of nowhere after all these years.
And all of a sudden, the stats change, right? That's fair. Gary, we've been talking about, we get do a whole show on the Hall of Fame, and maybe we'll still get the chance to do it. Certainly when the final 5 come in, I hope I'm still doing the show and I could holler at you for why you did what you did. But just one last thing I want to mention to you, we got about a minute to go here, is I know that I have an OCD about Ron Rivera. I don't understand it. Here is a guy at his press conference who did not know. And I'm telling you, Gary, if you watched the conference, I'm sure you did. You watched that piece. He didn't know that a Green Bay win later last week eliminated the Commanders from the playoffs. And the way he's handled that quarterback situation, I think, is ridiculous. He's a lifetime 195. All right, I guess he's got a winning record. I guess that counts for something. How is this guy still considered such a bona fide NFL coach? And does he survive in Washington after this year?
Well, so I'll answer the first part of the question. I thought he was brought to Washington because he's a very level-headed guy that walked into a very volatile situation with Daniel Snyder, and he gave the organization some credibility because he did get to a Super Bowl in Carolina. As far as what's going to happen going forward, the reason I don't think he's going to be fired is because the team is for sale right now.
All right.
And I think it's going to be hard to get a quality coach to go in there with the uncertainty of who the new owner is going to be.
Right.
New owners invariably like to have their own coach. So I think Rivera, he doesn't embarrass the organization other than with comments about, like you just mentioned. He's totally mishandled the quarterback situation because basically he doesn't have a quarterback and he's grasping at straws.
You're right.
I think he holds on until that team is sold. And then depending on when that happens, if there's time enough to make a change for next year, which seems unlikely, then that could happen in the offseason. But I think he's there for, probably one more year, and then the new owner will make the decision on him.
All right. That's good logic. I appreciate that very much. And we'll see what happens with that Washington franchise. But they certainly, Gary, that 20-20 tie with the Giants just seemed to, they weren't right. They weren't right from the minute after that game happened. But the Giants, we talked a lot. I talked a lot with Sal Paolantonio earlier in the show. This game Sunday doesn't really mean much at all, but we'll see how the Giants could do. I think the Giants got a huge break with the flip of Minnesota and San Francisco. I think the Giants have a real puncher's chance to go into Minnesota and win that game.
Well, they should have won there a couple of weeks ago. They pretty much gave that game away.
Right. So that'll be very interesting to see if New York, because I'll give you credit, too. You kept saying Daniel Jones was a viable NFL quarterback. It certainly looks like you were right. So,
Pat, I just want to leave you with one thought. I'm really extremely curious to see how Brian Daboll plays it on Sunday. There's a bit of the integrity of the league at stake here because the Cowboys, if they beat Washington, the Giants are able to beat Philly, then the Cowboys win the division.
Right.
But on the other hand, is this real responsibility to making sure the Giants are as healthy as possible?
Right.
It's a real dilemma for these coaches.
Yeah. He's going to opt for the latter, I believe, Gary. I don't think you're going to see much of Saquon or Daniel Jones at all in that game on Sunday. The Eagles lead the league in sacks. I think Brian Daboll would be run out of New York if he got Daniel Jones hurt in that game.
Well, everybody talks about what Coughlin did in the final game of the 07 season.
Right.
But the circumstances were much. He was trying to stop a team for an undefeated season. He owed it to the league.
Yeah, that's right. And he deserves endless kudos for what he did there.
And he got the Giants on a Super Bowl run.
He did. He certainly did. You're right about that, too. All right, Gary, it was an excellent conversation. We could talk all night long. I appreciate you hanging out with me and look forward to talking to you again next week. We'll talk some playoffs. All right.
Sounds great, Pat. Thanks a lot.
All right, great, Gary Myers. Sandra, I know I'm way late. If you could just bring up that Week 18 schedule, I promise I'll get the hell out of here in 30 seconds. Just to touch base on the NFL now spreading the schedule a little bit. There's no Monday night game, but the season finale weekend starts with 2 Saturday games. The Chiefs are in Las Vegas early Saturday afternoon. I think the Chiefs win that one easy. And then Saturday night, the whole country will be glued to the AFC South Championship between Tennessee and Jacksonville. I think the Jags are going to win that one. Sunday, as I mentioned, a mishmash of games. A lot of teams, maybe though, like teams like the Ravens, the Chargers, certainly San Francisco and Minnesota jockeying for playoff seeds. There'll be some interesting games there. The Eagles, of course, they've got to win. Sal's right. They have simply just got to win, and they need to win convincingly in order to get themselves, I think, a little right for the playoffs. And then at the Sunday night game, if Seattle wins, the Sunday night game is simply the Packers will walk to an incredible 7 seed, given where they were 6 weeks ago. So there you have it. There you have it for Week 18 of This Week in Pro Football. I appreciate everybody sticking out with me here. A great show, I think, with Sal Powell, Gary Myers, Sean Green. Thank you all very much, gentlemen. And we look forward to talking to you as we roll into the playoffs next week here on JAKIB Sports on This Week in Pro Football.